Good afternoon, everyone. A very, very warm welcome to all of you. Our topic for today is peace, happiness, prosperity through purity and truth. And our guest speaker for today is Sister Maureen. Sister Maureen, good morning and a very warm welcome to you. Please accept this rose from all of us.
Thank you.
I have the pleasure of introducing Sister Maureen today. She's currently the coordinator of Yarra Valley Living Centre in Australia. She began her association with the Brahma Kumaris in 1977. Based in Asia since 1981, she has helped to establish and sustain BK centres throughout Asia. In Hong Kong, she was the chairperson of Unity for Peace, Secretary of Living Values Education, and Secretary of Asian Business Leadership Exchange, and helped to establish Food Link, a charity linking hotels and restaurants with social welfare organizations. In Cambodia, she was instrumental in setting up Living Values educational program and a social enterprise for victims of landmines, the Khmer Independent Life Team. She has organized dialogues throughout India for the Future of Power project, bringing leaders together to explore the use of power. She was the coordinator of National Office of the Brahma Kumaris in Australia and has published a few books. In the middle of establishing a Brahma Kumari Center in Taiwan, COVID has brought Sister Maureen back to Australia. Sister Maureen, welcome again. And our moderator, Sister Philippa. Welcome, Sister Philippa.
Thank you so much. That's
Sister
beautiful.
Philippa Blackman is a journalist and radio presenter. Having worked for BBC Radio in the UK for many years, she is now the coordinator of a national project, 100 Women of Spirit, which recognizes the spiritual contribution to society made by women. She is an ordained interfaith minister and has studied Raj Yoga meditation with the Brahma Kumaris for almost 40 years. Welcome, Sister Philippa.
But can we just begin with what it was about this topic of truth, which in all this time we haven't actually really gone into yet, and looked at the connection between truth and purity. What was it in your mind that made you think of this topic?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for adjusting the time, because my first invitation was 2 a.m. So 4 a.m. is a lot more comfortable for us yogis. So lovely to be with you. So, I think many would agree that the word purity is often very off-putting. I know it was not an attractive idea for me at all. As a teenager, I thought purity means boring, old-fashioned, no fun, all of those things. But when I've studied a bit of Hindi, and what I realized is the prefix sat is used for purity as well as truth. And being able to make that connection, I think really opened up my understanding of purity, because, I think it was very limited. But to think of purity as truth, to me, is so much more attractive, or it was. Now, of course, I've embraced purity as a key to life and happiness in life.
So do you think truth has its own vibration in the same way that purity does? Is there a sort of an energetic correlation between purity and truth?
I think I've had to make that correlation. It wouldn't have come to me. It didn't come to me in the early days. I mean, truth to me is just so attractive. We talk about a new world, and for me, a world of truth is like real heaven, because it's simple. When we're not truthful, life is so complicated, and it means not real, we don't understand. We're not living from authenticity. So truth was so attractive, and purity, really took a long time for me to embrace it as a wonderful concept, I guess, and truth helped me to do that. that connection.
But we do have positive associations with purity. You know, we talk about, this being pure water, pure food, the air is very pure. You know, we do use it in a positive context as well.
Yeah, that was all fine. When it came to people, it seemed to be full of a feeling of judgment. And when you talk about purity, people often feel shame, they feel fear, they want to run because they don't feel they can live up to it. And yet, in one of our classes, we were asked, how pure are you? And I think we all went, oh my gosh, how pure am I? It kind of covers so many things. So it seemed impossible to be able to come to a understanding of how pure am I? But then the answer was, or that what was suggested was that purity is the mother of peace and happiness, as they say in India. So you can tell how pure you are by how peaceful and happy you are. That's such a good litmus test in a way, because a lot of people who think they are pure are not really very peaceful or happy because they're so busy judging those who are impure. So it really brings it down to what it really is.
Mm. And what about this word truth? Because the world that we're living in now, there is very little truth. You know, we have fake news, we have disinformation, false truth. It's almost become a concept that people no longer trust. You know, the news that we watch on the television, how true is that? Or is there a particular lens that the news is being portrayed to us through? So how do we grapple with this concept of truth in an age which is in reality post-truth?
It is really post-truth. And one of the things going on in Australia at the moment is that the government is looking to give a voice finally to the Indigenous people, the Aboriginal people of Australia. But there's such a division because some people feel it's going to act against not just Aboriginal people, but the whole country. And so we're all confused, and it's so important. I mean, I don't want to get this wrong. I don't want to hold back a people that have been oppressed. So, of course, the heart says yes to this voice, but then the logic that's coming through and the ideas that are coming through, it's maybe manipulated. And so we're having a lot of conversations, and it's something so important. It's really very important to many of us, and yet we don't know which way to go, vote yes or no.
So you've got an actual debate around that whole topic, which is drawing people's truth out of them. And in a way, I wonder the extent to which truth is relative and the extent to which truth is absolute. Because if I look at the moon, the crescent moon in my part of the world, my truth is that it sits like this. Whereas in your part of the world, your truth is that the crescent moon sits like this. And both are true to each of us. So can we say one of them is true or not? And if not, is there an absolute truth that goes beyond each of our personal truths?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Truth needs to be lived. So I think there is an ultimate truth, but within that, even within that truth, there's each one's personal truth. Like we just had a group of people from Taiwan here doing the meditation course. And one of them, took so much. And she said, she kind of wanted to belong. And so, having an alignment with the BKs, I think to her meant that she'd be closer. And I said, not at all. You'll be close, you'll be loved, you'll be a part of us, no matter if you continue your practice of Buddhism or you embrace this philosophy that's quite different. Because at the end of the day, what we need to be is ourself. And so that inner truth is paramount. And I've studied Buddhism. I still have a great love for Buddhism. And at one point, maybe 15 years after practicing with the BKs, I thought, oh, maybe I really am a Buddhist. And it was a bit of a challenge because I'd become quite attached to this path. But then I thought, well, I have to be who I am. And I have to have the courage to be who I am and to live that truth and not, not deviate here or there just because of fear or belonging or, feeling that I'll lose my friends or anything like that. Truth is paramount to my peace and my happiness. And saying that, going back to the connection with purity and truth, so is purity.
So this concept really of being true to yourself, and that is the navigation, the guiding concept that we journey with throughout our life, is what is my truth.
And sometimes I've stood up against, the majority and the norm, and somebody said to me, but how could you do that? Because it kind of separates you a bit and, you're so service orientated. And I said, well, I couldn't serve if I'm not authentic. I couldn't do what I do if I'm not coming from a place of my truth and my values. So I really won't do things that I feel aren't aligned with my values, because it doesn't serve me. It doesn't take me to my goal, which is authenticity and really being true to myself. It's paramount as well. That's.
Can you somehow describe for me what that feeling is about? Because I think for many of us, we're following a path that society has laid out for us. We're maybe influenced by ideas around us. There may be some people listening to this that have never really stood in their own truth and wonder what that feels like. Can you describe that for us? Because you journeyed with this. How does it feel?
Yeah, actually, there is often a loss in some way, or we fear that there'll be a loss. But for me, when I live in truth and when I choose truth over everything else, it served me very well. And all that could happen doesn't happen. So I think there's a protective force, or, truth in itself has its own powerful energy. And, it takes us through. I mean, even what we read from Mahatma Gandhi and his work, Satyagraha, it was really that path of nonviolence was based on truth, and how he was able to inspire so many people to risk their lives, to take beatings, to be jailed for truth. It was the truth that was behind it all. That was what drove that whole movement.
You've talked about this word sat, which in Hindi means truth, as in Satyug, the land of truth, and purity, which is sat, as in sattvic or satopradhan, to use those Hindi expressions. And there's another sat, which is the Sat Guru, the true guide. What can you tell us about truth when it comes to the divine principle? Because so many people have their own truth and understanding around the divine. Can we ever say that one person's understanding is the truth, or do we just say it's true for them?
Well, I think the meaning of truth is that it's eternal. And I also have explored for myself, what are the basic universal truths? And I only came up with 4, because what they are is laws that you might think you can break those laws, but you can't. You'll break yourself against the law, but you can't break the law. And one of those is this idea of eternity. And, for me, that was such a word, because I studied Buddhism, and in Zen, you have something called a koan. And a koan is something you meditate on, that expands your mind because you realize there's no answer. So eternity is one of those, because you try and explain or prove eternity, it's impossible. But, you know, when I heard that eternity, my mind just went into a different place, and it still does. I just resonate with eternity. So truth means that it's eternal. It can't change. And what the understanding in the BKs is that God is light and is incorporeal, so without a body. So that's what makes, you know, the Satguru so elevated in the sense of you can take your mind up to that. It's not in a hierarchical kind of elevated way, but a being that's constant. There is nothing in this world that's constant. Like you talk about truth, it drives us crazy trying to work things out. But to be able to take the mind to someone that is non-changing and rest in that place, that's the Satguru, the eternal, the incorporeal, the one without a body. And to me, this is, you know, a really great truth, because bodies are not eternal. No body is eternal. And anyone that comes into a body goes through this samsara, this journey of life. And when we are in life, we're going to keep changing our age, our maybe even our bodies, as I would see it, but there's constant change in this world. So nothing in this world is really truth in the sense unchanging, permanent.
That is such a concept for the modern mind to grapple with, because we've got used to even science changing its mind on what is truth. You think you can hang your hat on a theory, and then they go and change their mind, and now this is the new theory. There's so little that you can really hang your hat on, as I use that expression, truly rely on to be the unchanging principle. And yet here we are in this meditation practice, diving into this experience of an unchanging reality. And that is so far from our lived reality in our everyday lives that it can either be too huge to contemplate, or else so attractive that you just want to be immersed in that which is truth. It's kind of an either or, isn't it?
Yeah, but you know, if we do embrace it, it's so comforting, because you know, it's this constant change that creates so much tension. Like whatever you think about relationships, your finances, your physical state, you can't feel secure and you can't feel at rest, because it's constantly changing. And it's so tiring, actually, very, very tiring to be in a state of constant change. I mean, it can be fun to some extent, but the rate of change at the moment also is, I think it's almost beyond our ability to cope with. And so being able to come into that presence of something unchanging, someone unchanging, is really a relief. It's really where we can rest. And if we then hold that and keep that awareness throughout our life, we see everything else as a drama. Things are changing. That's the drama. And we don't take it too seriously, because it's not a reality in that sense. It's not a lasting situation. And it's not as important in my life as where I anchor myself in that constancy and that unchanging, because the soul is also a being that, you know, behind all of this, you know, physical appearance, there's this being. And I remember our good friend Anthea Church saying, even if we died, even if we were shot, the mind would react. Oh, what happened? Who did that? And the body and everything would react. But the soul, she described as a peace pulse, and it would go from this body, beat, 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 to another without changing a beat. And that's the constancy and the truth within myself that I can hold on to and, really strengthen, because that's so vital in this world.
And these concepts that you're sharing, we're saying are unchanging truths, regardless of my own perception of these truths and how they might change with the passage of time. So, this notion of the soul, the continuity of consciousness, and the purity of that consciousness. If I can just bring you back to what you were saying about the divine principle, who some call God or whatever name you want to use, as being this unchanging truth. Is there a principle of purity that is very strongly connected to that unchanging principle of divinity?
Well, I think behind it all is balance. People often think that balance is somewhere, perfection is somewhere up there. And, even I think one of the things that has confused us about this word purity is that we've had extremes like the Victorian era where, in that search for purity, it got filled with rules and regulations and an imposed morality, and it suppressed and controlled. So the aim, no doubt, was very good. We want to bring back purity, and women can be pure and elegant and have etiquette and manners. And, there's a side of that that's so beautiful. But the other side is how we get there, which is through oppression and control. And even for ourselves to fit into that, we have to be like in a straitjacket. And so I think balance is the underlying principle, because when we try to bring balance back to society, we often go to these kinds of extremes. But balance is, and this is what we see in nature, nature's always trying to balance itself, so I think balance is that underlying principle that keeps the steadiness and keeps us sane also, because if we're not in balance, we're not very clear to start with, because we've got all these other things going on. So yeah, probably balance is behind it all. And that is such a natural force, the force of balance. Even for ourselves, if we don't keep a balance in what we eat, in our sleep patterns, in our relationships, how much we work, then we get sick. We get, our relationships are affected.
But this journey that we go on, the journey of the soul, exploring this balance, the divine principle is the one unchanging thing in this whole world that reminds us of our origins, that reminds us of our original way of being. So everything else is going through the process of change, of flux and change, of dark and light and truth and untruth. But this Sat principle, this divine principle, is what is unchanging and brings us back into that place of balance that you're talking about, reminds us what that looks like. Because otherwise, if everything in this world was changing, how would you ever restore balance? Because it's all in a state of flux. Can I bring us on to another Sat word, which is Satsang, the company of truth, and the importance of company. And I'm curious to ask you a little bit about your experience of creating this retreat center at the Yarra Valley, because it was a gift in a way from one community to another community, because it wasn't being used as a venue. And you very much stepped into the role of creating a community around these principles of truth and purity. What has that been like, and how has that gone down with your local community?
So I think, the whole thing of community, to me, what underpins it is that everyone feels safe to be themselves. And so this is, I think, the guiding principle here. So although we have our principles, our practices, we have a timetable, but what we're all doing here is striving to live that comfortably, meaning not forcing and not judging each other, giving each other space to really come into that. And I remember one person who is such an invaluable member of this community, she really needs space, so I said, well, just be here whenever you can. If she feels to go away for a day or a week or a month, so be it, because I value her input here so much. And yet to be, in one place, she's creative, she's dynamic, so to be in one place is very hard. It's not that she doesn't even want to be, but, we have our own way to live our life, and so with others as well, they all have the intention to live this path fully, but to the best of their ability and where they're at now. And so, we're all mature. Most of us have been on the path for 35, 40 years or plus. So we're mature, we understand each other, and we set up our program here that allows each one to be themselves. And it's a beautiful journey. It's a beautiful journey. And for me, there's so much love between people who can be themselves, because otherwise there's so much unspoken tension and a feeling of control. And, we can't be happy in that state. And happiness is so important for our real growth, because then it comes from fullness, it comes from love. So, we're a very changing community. We've had quite a few people from other countries come and stay a few months. And, it's just been really wonderful and dynamic. People of different nationalities and different backgrounds coming in, staying a few months, moving on, coming back. So we're keeping this fluidity as well by not controlling and holding on, and just trusting also that, it's not my place to control. It's something that's being gifted, it's happening. In fact, we've already got 3 retreat centers in Australia. So it was like another retreat center where we have to, have volunteers and a lot of finances to keep up the maintenance. You know what it's like, you're there at Oxford. So it was like, oh, we need another retreat center, like a hole in the head. But it came, and it's meant to be. And so we're just trying to make it as real and as fulfilling. I think that's the thing. Each one of us want to be fulfilled and want to flourish, and we want each other to flourish. And some people have addictions or some kind of challenges along this path, and we can embrace that as well, as long as there's honesty. See, truth. If people are honest about what's going on, there's certain boundaries. They respect the boundaries, we respect them, and we're moving along very lovingly and respectfully in a broad sense. So yeah, it's been a wonderful journey.
Very lovely to hear. And we're having some comments coming through from people listening, saying that they really love the concept as you're setting it out. And actually this weekend that I'm on is for a group of teachers from throughout the UK, and like your group, very mature and have been practicing this path for a long time. But one of the things that seems to really be emerging is each one needing to honour their own process, honour their own journey, honour maybe even difficulties that they've had in the past that they've never resolved, that keep coming up and tripping them up. And so there does seem to be a wave of truth and authenticity that is blowing through, and in a way preparing people to stand fully in their own truth as they are. And I think what you're doing there at the Yarra Valley is it's really touching into this. And so I think there must be a real appreciation for this acceptance, this openness for each one's truth to be their truth, this wave rippling out across the world. Do you get that sense?
Yeah. And even this group that came here, this Taiwanese group, they were so amazed because they expected it to be, like quite controlling, and they didn't expect it to be light. And I think this is, what some people say to me is the trademark of the BK's lightness. So whilst we have a very kind of disciplined life, like getting up 4 o'clock and, so many disciplines in our life, but if we can be light, it's a balance, and it serves us and it serves others.
Well, it is interesting to see how these themes seem to be repeating around the world, and this sort of exploration of each one's own truth being something that is true to them. Do you have a sense of how the retreat centre that you're creating has been received by the local people? And how do they receive this vibration of purity and truth?
Yeah, I mean, we have a little local organic market, and it's so small, but anything I want, like we had this open day, and I just went there, and within half an hour, got the musicians, the stage, a PR person, a bit of money from the government as a grant. And it was just like within a half an hour, it came together. And it is a place like that, like we have something extra, we go down and offer it to people there. And what's happening is, like, even recently, one of the men down there who runs the circus for the children, he said, I want my 4 children to come to you to learn about God. And I said, oh, wonderful. And I said, we can keep it very open, because I don't know I think he's Christian or that way inclined. And, he said, no, I want them to learn your way. And such an openness. And then I don't know if he talked to his wife, but she, said, I've got to talk to you. When I was there last week, I've got to talk to you. And she said, I want to learn your meditation. And it's, I think when we can just live it and be it. At first they were a bit, some were a bit reactive to the white. And again, white symbolizes purity. So I think it triggers that concept of purity as like, oh, you're better than us. But, when we're just ourselves and just go there and don't worry, just be who we are, I think they come to accept us. So, yeah, it's been really quite wonderful. And one of the things I love about here is that little market. I try to get there every week because it's just there's so much connection. And that's what I've heard recently, that the way to deal with addiction is connection. I heard addiction is because of no diction, not being able to express, but this new one of, the way to deal with addiction is connection. So if we kind of push people away because of their addictions, how are they ever going to heal? So of course there's got to be healthy boundaries, but connection is so important, and we are hardwired to connect. It's our truth. It's part of truth to be connected.
We've got some lovely comments coming in the chat box. Someone's saying that they think being authentic is very important. If you have got a question you would like to ask Maureen on this subject of truth that we're discussing, do please put it in the chat box, and we'll put your question to Sister Maureen. But for someone who doesn't feel connected to their own truth, in other words, they've had a system that they have embraced without any questions, and they're feeling perhaps that it's not serving them in the way that is making them happy with that litmus test that you told us about. What would you suggest as being the first steps that someone can do towards feeling what their own truth means to them?
Actually, our truth is our values. What is really important to us in our life? And I think we have this friend, right, Philippa, Brian Bacon, who used to take us through this self-managing leadership. And he said, finding your values is detective work. It's not creative. Don't get creative. Don't try and be someone that you want to be. No, like, we can all think, oh, Mother Teresa, let me be like that. No, it's detective work. What are my values? And that, I think, is the first step. What am I willing to live for? What am I willing to die for? And it's a very, very powerful way to live according to your values. And it's not just like a nice thing. It's imperative if you're really wanting, like I've dedicated my life to know who I am, basically. So I have to live truth. Otherwise, I'm just wasting my time. Like I said, at the end of the day, I have to be me, whatever that is. And I have to face that and accept it and not be afraid to be that.
And what is the role of making mistakes? In order to find that truth, you have to explore, you have to try different things. And within that, sometimes you get it wrong.
Yeah,
do you see wrong as wrong, or do you see that as part of the learning journey?
Well, I think this is where, when we're in a path, we're often so afraid to get things wrong. I know I have been in the past, but I need to grow. And so I need to make decisions and follow through with my decisions and face the consequences of my decisions, because that's how I grow. But if I'm too afraid to do something because I might get it wrong, then I can't grow. So yeah, but having said that, I've got a wonderful community around me and around the world. So it's good to explore my ideas with others, and especially if we're making a big decision, sometimes we can be deluded about something, or attracted, or there's some attachment pulling. Those things can happen. So, when I have a community that I can talk about things with, and especially one that doesn't judge, then I'm free to explore a lot more easily than if I'm afraid to speak to, who I consider a more experienced teacher that I'm afraid of and I can't open up with. If I can just talk, openly and speak my truth and know that the intention of the other person is for my best, outcome, then it's wonderful. So I don't suggest we go it alone, really. It's good to have wise companions, people who will speak truth to me.
So there's a correlation with courage to stand in your truth, and the ability to face your fears, because sometimes we avoid situations because we're fearful. But truth has no time for fear. It's the opposite of fear.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And can you put that into a kind of a global context for us, that we're living through this age of post-truth, how do we hold on to a vision that, as we're saying, truth is the ultimate reality, and that this world will return to a time of truth, an age of truth? How do we hold on to the hope that that is still a possibility despite what we see in the world today?
To me, it's not just a possibility. It's one of the eternal truths that everything goes in a cycle. And so as we're in the darkest night and the time of, like you say, post-truth, of falsehood and ignorance meaning, like, we don't even realize how we're hurting each other. A lot of people are really imposing a lot of sorrow on others and don't feel it. So ignorance is that don't care. It's like they don't realize the consequences of their actions. It's a big word, ignorance. It's a very, very big one. But, you know, knowing that we are moving towards some brighter future, I don't get too serious about all that's happening, because, you know, when you're trying to find truth, you end up in discussions that take you down a rabbit hole, and, you know, and if you're not careful, into arguments. I mean, part of this untruth has been such serious division, you know, between families over this whole, you know, COVID thing and all this. So, you know, not to, you know, to be kind throughout it all, to really be as gentle and kind with yourself and others as we all try to navigate our truth, you know, so not to impose, because that's violence. So, yeah, you know, I have a lot often going, I don't know what to believe anymore out there, but I just know where I'm going, and I try to use the values and qualities to navigate this journey. Like, and safety is one of the key principles in everyone's life. So if someone's feeling unsafe, let me be considerate and help them to feel safe. I may have different opinions about how I think I need to be safe, but if somebody else is in fear, why challenge them? And no, just, you know, go along with what helps them to feel safe. And, you know, if you not compromising your own self, but, you know, we can adjust and move along, because, yeah, it's a very hard time for many people.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting a sense of the word acceptance as well, that, you know, we accept other people as they are, and we ask for them to accept us as we are, and you know, we accept the weaknesses within ourselves as we journey towards our truth, and we don't judge ourselves for you know, not being able to be what we want to be. But, you know, the idea I have from your life is that you've kept on exploring, you've kept on expressing your truth as it has come to you, and at the end of the day, that is all any of us do.
Yeah, and actually this truth, and so also purity, is such a drive towards lifting my energy, because when I hear a truth, I'm empowered, I'm uplifted. There's an energy that comes with truth. So same with purity. Like when we talk about pure air, it's a very beautiful example, because you can't see it, but you feel it. And when you're in pure air, your energy rises. When you drink pure water, when you eat uncontaminated food, your energy rises. So purity and truth lift our energy. And I think that's why we can afford to have a little bit of courage to live our truth, because we will have the energy to do it. We operate on a different frequency.
Fantastic. I've really enjoyed your exploration of the relationship between purity and truth, and it's really given me a lot to think about. We've had a lot of appreciation coming through the chat box, no direct questions, but it might just be nice to move into experiencing what we've been talking about in terms of that vibration of truth and standing in our own truth, being true to ourselves, being our authentic selves. So could you lead us into an experience of that, Sister Maureen?
Yeah, sure. So a wonderful way to meditate is just to hold a word in the mind and feel its resonance. So just bring this word purity to mind. And feel the energy of lightness and easiness. Because in purity, there's trust. We don't need to be guarded. Purity enables me to let go. Truth also enables me to let go of what's not me. All the strategies that I've set around me to navigate this world. But sit with purity, with truth. Rest in that. Let go. Of anything that's coming in the way. Shoulds, judgments, let go. I need to come back to myself, my authentic self. And also know that God accepts me as I am, what I am. So let me accept myself as I am and what I am. And I discover that I'm much, much more than I ever thought I would be. I journey inside to my real self and find beauty in truth. In purity. accept myself and I accept others. I feel safe to be myself. And I allow others the safety to be themselves. Om Shanti. I am peace.
Thank you so much, Sister Maureen. I think what is so evident is that when someone is standing so totally in their own truth, that speaks for them. And you have given us such a fine example of that truth that you stand in. And I'm struck by when you're comfortable and settled in your own truth, you're not faced or challenged by anyone else's truth. It doesn't upset your truth because you stand so firmly in your truth. Before I let you go, there's just one question that has come in, and often the questions are that come in at the end are practical of nature, and this is a practical question. What is it that you can do to let me just get back to achieve? Do you have any method that you use to achieve that state of purity? We've talked a lot about purity, and someone might feel really inspired to explore this. What method can they use to really uncover that feeling of purity from deep within themselves?
I think that guideline really helps, that we know how pure we are by how peaceful and happy we are. And so experiment with foods, with the way you live your life. Like, if you watch something, you read something, you have a conversation, how do I feel? Is that increased or maintained my peace and happiness? Or do I feel compromised in some way? So I think this is a really great thing to come back to. We might speak with someone and we're talking about purity, and we might be talking about someone else not being so pure. How does that make me feel? It doesn't make me feel peaceful and happy. So I just kind of get that guidance in my life by that definition, I guess, or the way we can calculate our purity, peace, and happiness.